Welcome to LATHAM Field Day Live. Very excited to have you here today. We've got some great content, some experts that have been around the country, and really excited to hear what they have to say about what they're seeing across Latham country and across the Midwest. I'm John Latham. I'm the president of Latham High Tech Seeds. We've got Lyle Marcus is our corn product manager. We've got Phil Long as our precision agronomist. We're going to hear from Bob Foley, our pre-development manager, Mark Grunmeyer, our soybean product manager, and then we'll also hear from Corey Catt in the field, our forage product manager. So really excited about that. So I want to tell you a little bit about the Latham story for those of you that aren't familiar. I'm really proud to be third generation Latham with my brother Chris and my wife Shannon. Really proud of that. And then we're celebrating our 75th anniversary this year in 2022. So very excited about that. We've had Lathams that have been farming at Alexander since 1892 on the home farm, and then also we have been in the same office since my grandparents built it in 1950 as their home. My dad and uncles grew up there. So really, really excited to be in the seed business and then to be an independent company. It's a lot of fun. So we've excited about that. Now we've had to pivot here in the last couple of weeks because we had a major storm come through, 92-mile-an-hour windstorm, and really took care of our Precision Agronomy Center. So we pivoted like everyone in agriculture does. We're resilient, and we came back strong here, and we're going live today with our experts. And I think it's going to be a lot of great content. So excited about that. So we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the anniversary of 9/11, the 20-year anniversary coming tomorrow. And then also we lost 13 soldiers here a couple weeks ago in Afghanistan. And we also want to honor all the different soldiers, all the veterans out there from whether it be Vietnam, Korea, World War II, you name it. We want to thank you, and we want to take just a quick moment of silence to honor all those that have fallen. So please join me. All right, thank you. Thank you for that. We appreciate it, and thank you so much to all of our veterans. Well, let's move now to our precision agronomist, Phil Long, and we're going to have a game day theme here. And Phil, tell us a little bit about your university, where you came from, and your background.
Sure, John. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I'm a proud Purdue alumni, Boilermaker previously. I spent 5 really good years there. Spent quite a bit of time in the student section at Ross Ade Stadium. So Boiler up, proud to be Purdue alum. And even though there's a little in-state rivalry, I know living here in Iowa, I'm still pretty proud of being a Purdue graduate.
Good Purdue graduate, but now you're adopted Iowan. So we're happy to have you here in Iowa and doing a great job for us. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the Premier Agronomy Center and what happened, and then all the great things you're working on. Maybe give us a little tour of the map here.
Sure. Yeah. So when I'm excited to be able to present this. Obviously, wish we could do it in person, but when I think of what we did and the transition that we made here with the help of not only our intern Kirsten sunk in here this year, we made a lot of changes from where we were at last year. The Premier Agronomy Center to me is really, in 3 words, product meets agronomy. And that comes from everything that we do. I spend a lot of time, so does Mark and Lyle, on the phone talking to customers and hearing different agronomic things out there. With the Data Forward program, obviously, I spend a lot of time working with our customers and not only improving their ROI on their operation, but also, looking for those little things, the one thing that's holding them back from that top end yield. So, the Premier Agronomy Center is all about that, using those agronomic topics and being able to display them and talk about them. So there's a lot of exciting things happening there. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a windstorm, but we'll give you a tour no matter what. This one will be a little less walking, I will say. So just picture yourself walking back and forth about a quarter mile each way. But they're going to throw the map up there. I'm going to work from left to right, just so it's easiest. I'll talk about colors, but in case you're colorblind, just remember left to right and top to bottom. So as you drive in, you see the on the map, it says 180th Street as you drive into the Latham headquarters there. you'll see now, instead of having most of the field in one crop and then a little bit of another, we have an even split of corn and soybeans that we can display. The front of the field is 60 different hybrids and varieties you see there in those small little segmented blocks there. The colors on the left side there, the first 30 are corn hybrids. We've got the different colors there are green for the different trade options and so forth. And then as you move across into the soybeans, you'll notice that we've got starts with yellow there. We got the E3s, and then all the way over to our extend block on the far right there in the gray and red, extend flex and extend. So a really nice bigger, if you've been to the field day before, you remember we have little 50-foot chunks with tilled alleys in between. Now we've got 8 rows wide by 200-foot long. Really nice opportunity to talk about and do different things to it as well, and display that. So if we move down from there, kind of go to the second tier to the south, back to the left side there on the teal, I'll call it. We just have 2 hybrids in there. That's actually the high yield plot. And so if you look on the left side and then the far right side, I'm going to flip a little bit, but on that left side there, you see that's the high yield corn plot. On the far right side, there's 2 soybean varieties. Those are our 2 high yield plots, or I call them kitchen sinks. So whatever I can try to throw at it to get the highest yields that we can. And then as you move right from there, you'll see our silage demo we have in yellow. Corey Katz's doing a lot of work there in his testing. We've got actually varying populations from row to row. So there's a lot of neat things going on in that one. And then as we move towards the center, you'll see there's kind of a meeting area in there. We have shorter plots, but a lot of different things happening there. And these demo areas, I'm calling them, are an opportunity for us to display different things, maybe not on a high level research scale, but show things off like planting depth and how important that is. Some of the new technologies, you can see SmartStax Pro in there. And then as we move across into soybeans, we have some different population trials. We've been getting a lot of conversation about how low can I go, how, different things like that. So we'll talk about those things as well. And then as you move right from that, not particular in the corn side, but in the soybean side, we have a seed treatment plot. So we've got some things in there, also using some customer input on IDC products to back up our Latham Ironclad lineup. If you're trying more of a offensive line, you might want to use some of those. So we're trying some of those things in there. Also have a late planted study. And then to the right of that, you see our high yield plot for soybeans. And then I'm just going to talk about the bottom part in general. The whole lineup down on the south part of the bottom part of the screen is our long-term plots. And to me, this is an exciting opportunity for me to show off some of those things. Continuous corn and soil health, no-till, those kind of things. So the left plot and the far right plot, I know I'm talking about in extremes, but soybeans and corn, the left and far right are going to be the cover crop plots. So we'll do some things in there. And then as you move towards the center, those 2 will be our no-till plots. And then the very center, right below the demo plots, is going to be our continuous corn. So those 2 plots will always be corn. Give us a good opportunity to try some different things to really show not only SmartStax and future hybrids in there, but also how we can use different management practices to really enhance no-till and continuous corn situations. So gives us a great opportunity to do what a lot of our customers are working with and trying to break those barriers, and just brings a lot of good conversation to the table.
Yeah, and it's great. And you'll have a lot of great data. Some got wiped out, but there'll be some data that didn't get wiped out from the storm. So we'll be talking about that on Facebook, because you're on every Thursday morning at 8:00. So catch Phil, and he'll be talking more about the Precision Agronomy Center. And I know Phil is also going to be going live from the field, and then he's going to be coming back. So you're going to be a busy guy.
Running back and forth.
So yeah, but so glad to have you here. And thanks for all you did on the Precision Agronomy Center. We want to make sure that this is interactive as well. Make sure you text keyword Latham to 74121. That's keyword Latham to 74121. And you can ask questions throughout also. And at the end, we're going to have a Q&A with all of our experts. So bring us your questions. So I want to move to Lyle Marcus, our corn product manager. And so glad to have you here today. Lyle, maybe you want to touch on your university, first of all, before we talk technology.
Sure. Thanks, John. I'm a South Dakota State Jackrabbit. Go big, go blue, go Jacks is our slogan. So excited to be here and joining that. a big rivalry we'll talk about with Bob a little bit later. There's a big rivalry along I-29. So we kind of have a lot of fun together. So excited to do that. So.
Well, great. Well, I would be remiss without adding my hat too. I'm a Iowa State Cyclone graduate and proud alum there. So got to add my hat to the mix.
Exactly.
So let's switch gears. Let's talk technology. And what are you seeing for corn technology in the marketplace now? That's exciting. We're going to talk a lot about different technology options.
So you mentioned Latham being an independent seed company, and we really pride ourselves on being a company that offers options. So independent options. So we have conventional hybrids in our lineup. We have Roundup Ready hybrids in our lineup, VT2 Pro, Smart Stacks. We're introducing 3 new technologies this year. Tricepta hybrid, which gives us additional above ground protection for above ground insects. We're adding a Duracade hybrid, which gives us a new mode of action on rootworm and gives us above ground protection as well. And then we're adding a Power Core hybrid too, Power Core Enlist hybrid. So we're getting above ground insect protection added over and above a Double Pro hybrid, but we're really expanding the herbicide tolerance there. We have Roundup, Liberty, Enlist 2,4-D tolerance, the FOP family of grass herbicides that we can do some grass control in corn there. So really excited about expanding that lineup and offering options to our customers.
That's exciting. And we'll get back to some of those options too, a little more in depth here in a minute. So let's pivot over to soybeans, and we have Mark Grunmeyer, our soybean product manager. And first, I know which you're alumni of, but maybe you want to talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Iowa State University, go Cyclones. John, I've kind of been out in the field a lot and stuff like that, looking at soybean fields and things like that. So I not just quite up on all the stuff that's going on, with the university and things. That I know there's a football game coming up soon. I think do we have a bye week or something like that in the next couple of days? It's fun. It really is. Love the rivalry, and it's going to be a good time.
Hey, our Hawkeye fans buy seed too, so remember that. We love you in Eastern Iowa, but this week it's a little rivalry here, and it's going to be a good game. So, Mark, let's talk a little bit about technology on soybeans. Kind of give us an overview of some of the soybean options that we have to offer at Latham.
Yeah, thanks, John. So, obviously started back in 96 with Roundup Ready 1 and that went well for about 10, 12 years. And then Roundup Ready 2s came out and followed quickly by Liberty Link. And those were all single herbicide trait technologies. Basically the moral of the story is, Latham's been able to access all these trait technologies from the major producers for many, many years. Mm-hmm. And, started then, and then back in 2016, Roundup Ready 2 Extend came on, which was our first, 2-traded stack. And so we had glyphosate and dicamba in 2018, followed shortly by GT27s, what we used to call the balanced GT soybeans. Then 19 came Liberty Link GT27s. The LLGT27 was our first triple stack herbicide option. And then really quickly rolled into Enlist E3, which is glyphosate 2,4-D and Liberty. And then just this past year, Extend Flex. So where we have got dicamba and Liberty and glyphosate in that one. It's just some great opportunities and a lot of good tools for the farmers to use out there to battle weed resistance.
Yeah, definitely. A year ago, we had 6 different soybean technologies, which is probably a little much, but we want to offer all the different technology options, and that'll pare down in the next couple of years as we get a couple of these new technologies kind of take over. But what technologies are you looking at that you're excited for the future?
Yeah, obviously, Extend Flex, I think that's just so brand new that there's a lot of good things coming out there. And I think there's some good herbicide programs that we can offer with Extend Flex soybeans. But then following that, the newest thing that we have is really going to be a 5 herbicide trait technology. Right now, it's just called HT4 for lack of a brand name, so to speak. But yeah, that one looks good. It's going to have tolerance to glyphosate, glufosinate, which is Liberty, as well as dicamba 2,4-D, and then tolerance to the FOPS herbicide family. That one will probably come out first in corn, but hopefully shortly followed up by soybeans that have all those tolerances as well. So excited to hear about that one.
Yeah, HT4 is going to be a great technology. It's kind of confusing because there's actually 5 different modes of action there, but it's called HT4. But we'll work through that. But that's a great option. Let's move back to corn and talking about future technologies. Lyle, what are you excited about in the future?
Well, the biggest thing we're excited about is the introduction of SmartStax Pro coming to the marketplace. So we know from history the SmartStax, the amount of SmartStax corn we've used in certain areas where we've got a lot of corn on corn. We're seeing some resistance build up to the insects being protected from that technology. New SmartStax Pro is coming along. It has the same technology within the SmartStax, the cry proteins that kill an insect by making them sick when they eat the roots. This is a new gene inserted in there that when a worm eats the root, it actually ingests a product that causes a protein inhibitor within the bug. So it kills it in a different way. So we're expanding how we're killing the insect, which gives us a lot of flexibility from an insect resistance management standpoint, just like we need to do on weed control. So excited about that. We had a wonderful opportunity this year to get some seed in. We've got it in a number of our test plots. We were really looking forward to sharing it face to face with growers at the field day here, but we have some roots we'll look at a little bit later on, and super excited about that technology.
Okay, sounds great. That's exciting. Well, let's kind of start off with the above ground technology, and we've got a couple great new options, PowerCore and Tricepta. You want to touch on that? I think we've got a video then we'll go to on that.
Yeah, so those two technologies are new. We got a couple of videos if we could get those to play, and then we'll kind of expand on those hybrids.
Okay.
We're excited to bring you the new hybrid LH5646 PowerCore Enlist. It brings you a tolerance to glyphosate, glufosinate, Enlist, FOP herbicides, and brings an added western bean cutworm and black cutworm protection to the Double Pro version of above ground protection. This pairs well with 5635, has excellent late season plant health and integrity. You'll see that it builds a nice set of kernel rows around, fair depth, a nice cob to kernel ratio, puts out an impressive set and uniform placement of ears, dries down nicely. And when we plant this hybrid, we're still going to talk about block refuging. And when we choose our refuge parent, we want to have a conversation about not picking a refuge that has an insect trait. So 5646 PCE.
Here's Latham's LH6146 Tricepta hybrid, new for 22 planting. We have a 111-day hybrid here with a new trait in it. So we have VT Double Pro protection along with additional protection from western bean cutworm as well as black cutworm in the springtime. This is a hybrid with a little more semi-fixed ear style, so semi-determined is what we call it. Average rows of grain are going to be 16 to 18. We see here in this plot we're exhibiting 18 rows of grain. Nice kernel depth with this hybrid, great grain quality. Late season intactness is very good. Standability here is good. This will senesce a little bit earlier than some other 111-day hybrids. We do recommend it, keeping it in its maturity zone or a little bit north. But a great product for us. That new technology adding some flexibility and insect protection.
Well, great, Lyle. Some great new technologies. I know you're excited about them for the above ground.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the LH5646 hybrid. I really like what I see on the late season plant health on that hybrid. Here we are late August, and some of the plots we've been in, a lot of products are senescing. That thing's carrying a lot of plant health. Its root structure is excellent. It's standing very, very well. And some of those high wind areas, it tolerated it very nicely. Super excited about that one. Bob mentioned block refuge in there. We just need to make sure that we understand block refuge. We're not going to have the refuge component in the bag on 5646. So we'll have to have a block refuge. That means planting a section of the field to a hybrid with no insect trait in it. Our recommendation there is to use our LH5742 Roundup. Will match up really nice be a complementary hybrid to do that block Refuge. So super excited about 5646. 6146, the Tricepta hybrid. It looks like Tricepta is going to be kind of the new technology over time, replacing the VT Double Pro, because we're adding those additional things to protect against above ground insects. So that's really exciting as well. We're seeing a lot more corn borer activity in the last couple of years, and this year we're seeing a lot of it, like that hybrid. 111 day, we're testing some others in our elite trials to look at for future to add to our lineup, but that's a great 111 day hybrid to go with 6149. 5949, 5847 to kind of add in there and round out that area. Keep it a little bit farther north. It doesn't like to move super south. It will senesce a little bit early in the fall, like I said in the video, but its overall standability and integrity at the end of the year is going to be great. We're excited about both these new hybrids.
It's exciting. That's great to hear, but I don't want to hear 5245s going away anytime soon.
Absolutely not.
It's going to be
have
here
a prediction about that.
All right. We'll talk about that, because that's as you know, that's a favorite of mine if you know me at all. And we've got a lot of other great Double Pro products that are going to be around for a while. So I'm thinking it's going to be 5 years, but at least of Double Pro products.
Yeah,
so
it's going to be a nice transition. We'll be bringing new products in with a new trait and then upgrading the Double Pro products. Correct.
That sounds great. Well, let's move. Let's bring Bob Foley in, our pre-development manager. Great to have you here today. First of all, we got to talk about your university a little bit. I think we're going to hear a little more about that throughout the day.
Now? You want to talk about it now?
Yeah,
it's going to take some time. So I went to school at North Dakota State, and we've played the Jackrabbits a few times. Usually, lately, it's been a very close game.
Yes.
Congratulations on going to the national championship game last year. I'm going to put my mug here.
Thank you. Congratulations on the 7 trophy.
Thank you. I had almost nothing to do with any of it. But we're very proud of being NDSU fans, and we watch them every weekend and watched them when they played at Iowa State, watched them when they played at Iowa. The outcomes were in our favor. But I'm not bringing that up.
Not at all. Not at all. I thought I was going to have to separate. You guys are talking really nice. I thought I was going to have to separate you. Earlier we did, but
you're not in a good chair right now.
Right. Eventually it's going to get, the pressure's going to get ramped up.
We're on camera.
Yeah. You're being nice today. Just wait. It'll change.
I wasn't going to wear blue. I can tell you that.
Well, great. Well, you've been around the Midwest traveling. We had Lyle kind of traveling the northern part of the country, and Bob was covering the southern part. Maybe you want to touch on a little bit some of the things you've seen around the Midwest.
Yeah, so I know there's a new crop report coming out at 11 o'clock. I haven't seen the results of it yet, but the prediction is that it's going to go up from the last crop report by a few bushel. So we have a bearish marketplace. And I think traveling through, we came out of Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, had spent a few weeks ago in Mississippi, which we'll talk about later, looking at germplasm. But then, there's a great corn crop out there, and there's just a lot of corn. Everywhere there's corn, and Lyle will tell you probably several of the same things, but there's a lot of places where maybe the soil has variation or there's been some drought stresses. And what I say is the corn crop typically looks fairly tired. Wonderful though it may be, it's going to be a race in some of these fields to decide if you're going to harvest a crop or catch a crop. And I think what I mean by that is you have to realize when we're getting ready for harvest and we've got these spots in the farms, we have to realize what this corn crop has been through. We started off with very fast and warm planting all over Latham country and east. And then we went to cold emergence.
And some frost.
Yeah, and some frost. We went through some regrowth. We went through a very stressful May and June, whether it was hot or drought or both. We had wonderful pollinating conditions. The weather during pollinating was as nice as we've had in years. So we have a plant that's been stressed, putting on a large ear, and the sink and source and draw to finish that crop off is giving us what I think we're sharing ideas is we're not finding great grain quality in these crops. And I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of the plant is not operating at its full capacity because it's just so wore out. It's been through so much. And at one point, you're going to drive away, go to church, and you're going to see your corn crop. And you come back and you think, man, I should harvest like tomorrow. And it's going to change very rapidly, and you need to be ready for it.
Yeah, we all do. Definitely. Well, Lyle's been traveling the north, and maybe you want to touch on some of the things you're seeing up north.
Yeah, so similar to what Bob's seeing, the crop is tired. I've been traveling most of Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota. Just to relate the story that Bob was saying, a few weeks ago, I was at the Latham plant, looked at the Premier Agronomy Center there and looked at the crop. Everything was nice and green. I came back on Monday and it had changed dramatically over the weekend. It had gotten hot. Now, Alexander, where we're based at, is in the heart of the drought in Iowa. If you throw up the drought map, where it's right in the center of it. So it's really a drought condition thing. As we go north, we're seeing a lot of rootworm feeding across the place. We're seeing some great corn, just like Bob's seeing. There's some great cornfields out there. I mean, there's 250 plus bushel corn in a lot of places. So if a guy is fortunate enough to gotten rain at the right time, had insect protection, those kind of things, we're seeing some great opportunities there. But even those high yield fields are tired. You can see them start to senesce back. Our friends that might be watching with us that are out in central South Dakota, central North Dakota, have probably suffered the most from the drought. Some of those guys have had some real challenges. We're thinking of you guys every day and want to help you next spring get along the way as well. So excited about seeing fall data and looking at that. Again, I'm with Bob. Pay attention to your crop. Go out there and walk those fields. Watch for things that are starting to crash early. We may be doing some combining of corn and switching to soybeans and back and forth this fall that we haven't done in the past few years.
And don't for a minute think you should be harvesting in the direction or the order that you planted your field. And don't do it in RN maturity. Those things are out the door today, right? We've got southern rust came in. We've got gray leaf spot has come in. We've got rootworm pressure has come in. This is not the same environment you planted in 2.5 months ago. So go look at your fields and pay attention to what's going on.
Walking fields, prioritizing harvest schedule is super important on corn to maximize those bushels. We all know the market's really good on price, right? So market price is really good. You want to capture all the bushels you can to make the most money at the end of the year. So we're excited to see the performance of the Latham products out there. They're shining very, very, very well. We have pockets too where rootworm have gotten us, drought has gotten us, but we're holding together very nicely.
Yeah, the combine monitors are going to have a fun time. Phil's going to have a great year with the mapping.
Right.
Those fields are everywhere from 100 to 300 bushel where we were looking, and this is in Tennessee. So the USDA crop report just comes out, 176.3 bushel yield, up 1.7 bushel versus August. And I think they added acres about a week ago, so prices will go down.
Fortunately.
So catch every kernel you can.
Yeah.
Right. Well, lots of variability, I think, is the bottom line. We're seeing some great stuff and certainly some not so great stuff.
Yeah.
Now you guys mentioned rootworm, and we're going to get to that, but let's stay on above ground for a minute. And you mentioned before the 5646 Power Core structured refuge. Maybe you want to touch on that a little bit, the structured refuge, and maybe some of the things you're looking for in a refuge hybrid, because we haven't had to worry about that for a while.
Yeah, it's been a few years since we had structured refuge because we have refuge in the bag on all of our products. But when European corn borer protected corn first came out, BT corn we call it, right? Everything was structured refuge, and that was back in the day when it was 20% structured refuge. So within a field, 80% could be insect protected corn. The other 20% had to have a non-insect trait in it. And everybody gravitated to a glyphosate tolerant or Roundup tolerant hybrid because the BT hybrids had, after the first couple times, had Roundup tolerance in them as well. So this product gets us to a point where we still need to do that block, but we only need to do 5%. So we need 5% block refuge. So on a 100-acre field, you need 5 acres of non-insect traded corn, and then the other 95 acres can be the 5646 Power Corn list. So what you look for in a refuge hybrid, it can't have an insect trait in it whatsoever, but you want to have a herbicide trait in it likely. Now, we also have some great conventional hybrids. A conventional hybrid with no insect trait in it could also be a refuge product, especially if a grower is in a situation where he's using a herbicide program that doesn't include Roundup. If he's using a more of a conventional herbicide program, he can do that. So we have the LH5742 Roundup, like I talked about, would be a great complement to use as a refuge. And also the 5740 conventional would be then another choice to use. So the main thing to remember is it can't have insect trait in it at all. So we're hopeful that in the near future, we can have Refuge in the bag with these power core enlist hybrids. But as we stand today, we need to talk about Black Refuge.
Yep. And that, to be very clear, not Double Pro.
Correct.
Don't use Double Pro as your Refuge.
Mhm.
That is the same insect protection that you're putting in power core enlist. So you're not gaining your Refuge by doing that. So just use Roundup or use conventional, and everything will be fine.
Mhm.
Right?
You know, we talked a lot about Double Pro, and eventually the Double Pro by itself is going away now, hopefully not for a long time. But the great thing is Double Pro, the technology is not, because it's the base for all these above ground technologies. Maybe you want to touch on that.
Yeah, it's a great chassis. And I think what we're really happy about is with the expansion in research, which I think you're going to talk about, we've been able to really sift through a lot of products that bring us alternative versions of Double Pro and more amped up, if you will. So we've shared them with you. The Tricepta is Double Pro with VIP3 on it. So it's a total package of lepidopteran resistance. So you get the cutworms, the earworms, and things like that. Moth, think moths are now covered. The power core enlist is actually Double Pro plus Herculex. So that gets you, the Liberty tolerance, that gets you black cutworm, and comes about those moths in a different way. And so the portfolio of what we're covering with these two new offerings is much larger than all of the other Double Pros we have. Now, that being said, the hopper from the research and development department is full of more souped up versions of Double Pro, and not just Tricepta and 5222. But for right now, look for those. We'll show you more of those, and they're going to be constant in our conversations over the next 2 years.
Well, great. Well, great discussion. Anything else on above ground that we missed?
I think that covers it. If there's questions, you can text, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for reminding me. So make sure you text the keyword Latham to 74121, and you can ask your questions there, and we'll be answering those at the end. So thank you, Bob, for reminding me.
I would just add one thing.
Mhm.
Like, to Bob's point, we're killing the bugs with different technology.
Mhm.
So from an insect resistance management standpoint, working with Latham as an independent company and offering options, you have the different traits. So on your farm, you can rotate from one technology to the other with products that can work for you to work on that insect resistance management tool.
Yeah. And I think it's like we did in Dad's days, right? We switched insecticides.
Yep.
We'd use Furidan one time, we'd use Thimet the next time, because if we didn't, it'd become inactive. And traits are going to be the same way. They're just in the seed versions of insecticide. So you have to think about rotating everything.
Yep. And as we rotate those, that will prevent us from having the issues like we had with Roundup Ready tolerance on soybeans, right? Where we have Roundup Ready tolerant weeds now. So very important to think about.
Well, great discussion on above ground technology. This is great. Let's move now. We talked a little bit about rootworm. Let's go from above ground to below ground, and a lot of different technologies out there that we want to rotate, we have access to. And I think we've got a video that touches on a little bit about some of those rootworm technologies.
2021 offered a great opportunity to look at rootworm feeding. Unfortunately, for many growers in Iowa and southern Minnesota, and even up into North Dakota and eastern South Dakota, saw a lot of rootworm damage in 2021 that we're still going to have the effects of as we get into harvest. Here we have an example. On the left is a VT2 Pro hybrid. Next, second from the left, is a Smart Stacks hybrid. Second from the right is our new 5209 Duracade with the AgriSure 5222 trait. And the far right plant is an example of some Smart Stacks Pro that we were fortunate enough to get planted in a number of plots for comparison on root feeding. What we'll notice here, we'll zoom in a little bit and I'll focus in on the Double Pro here. You can see the feeding that has occurred on the first and second and some even the third nodal roots. So the center of the root system is hollowed out. In fact, I can even stick a nice little hockey puck up in there and pretty much just takes out all the root mass from the center of that root ball. Then we jump over to the Smart Stacks and you can see we gain those roots back in. A little bit difference in And the root ball, that's a hybrid hybrid characteristic on root mass, but we can see that there's little feeding in that Smart Stacks in the center. We'll jump over to the 5209 Duracade hybrid with the AgroSure 5222 technology in it. And we can see we gain all of that root mass back in that first, second, and third nodal root, feeding virtually nothing happening there. Then as we transition into the Smart Stacks Pro, you can see why we're so excited about Smart Stacks Pro coming along. It's as good or slightly even better than the 5209, 5222 hybrid. So we're really looking forward to opportunities in the coming years. Next year, we'll be able to look at a number of the Smart Stacks Pro hybrids in our elite trial testing, and looking at more of the 5222 Duracade hybrids as well, to bring options to our customers to help with protection of corn rootworm in the future.
Well, that's a great video, Lyle. It's showing the differences. Really love to see that.
Yeah, it's interesting to dig roots and play in the field like that. Very interesting this year, though, when I was digging roots and trying to knock the soil off and washing roots, the soil came off really easy. That droughty stuff, you could just tap the bottom of the plant and the soil would just drop away. So it really tells us that we have some drought conditions. So, but within our lineup, we have 16 Smart Stacks hybrids, and we're adding in the Duracade. So now we have 17 products that can help us with rootworm protection, all the way from 95 day up to 115 days. So we have the nice lineup to go with our Double Pro lineup and our other new products to offer customers options there. So the video is great. So we brought a couple samples in. I dug these yesterday. Of the Duracade one is the one that Bob is holding up there. So if we could kind of zoom in on that root. When I talked in the video, I talked about feeding on the first, second, and third nodal root. So when you look at that nodal root system, it starts from the bottom to the top. And when we score rootworm pressure and feeding, we score the amount of feeding on the lower nodal roots. And as you zoom in on that picture, you can see with this 5222 Duracade hybrid, we have full intactness of all those nodal roots down at the base. So really protecting that from crown rots that we'll probably talk about a little bit later, and keeping that plant healthy. The main nutrients in moisture uptake all comes from those center roots, and those fibrous roots that Bob is touching there, where we see the fine root hairs on the outside, is where our nutrients come in. And when we keep that central root healthy, then we get the nice fibrous roots on it, and those things really pull the nutrients and the moisture out of the soil very, very effectively. So really excited about seeing the 5222. And when I compared it to a Smart Stacks, in our field, there was a little bit of Smart Stacks feeding at the Latham farm there. So excited to have this new technology already in our lineup. The other stump that Bob has over there is what we were hoping to show you in person, is a Smart Stacks Pro root ball. We had this hybrid that we were able to put into our testing. We're not able to talk about the hybrid, show ears or anything like that. We're just supposed to talk about roots because it's all about the root technology. But as he pulls that apart, you can see we're keeping that full intactness, no feeding in there. So now you got to remember, they have to feed a little bit, right? The bug has to at least take a bite in order to die. But we don't see the significant continued feeding that would chew up those roots. So really, really excited to see more hybrids with Smart Stacks Pro come to the marketplace. What we're going to find on Smart Stacks Pro is that it's going to be a slow conversion to Smart Stacks Pro from Smart Stacks. We're not going to convert hybrids from Smart Stacks to Smart Stacks Pro. All Smart Stacks Pro hybrids that come to us will be new genetics. We're working with a number of different suppliers that are going to be able to offer that trade on there. So it'll all be new genetics, and it'll be a slow transition to Smart Stacks Pro. But we're really excited to be on the front side of that with that provider offering us that opportunity to show it to our customers.
Yeah, very excited about Smart Stacks Pro for the future.
Yep.
That's a great one. Now, you guys have traveled a lot around the country, and it used to be we thought of rootworm kind of in the south, but it didn't go up north. But we've seen that a little different too. We're seeing it move north in some areas too.
We're seeing rootworm pressure way up in the southern Red River Valley. Southeast North Dakota is getting a lot of rootworm pressure up there. The little bug, the little rootworm, and he's feeding on silks and stuff. We get into these south winds and they get up in the wind and they can just blow north really, really fast. We're also seeing that little beetle is not just laying its eggs in cornfields any longer, right? There's some Iowa State data out where those insects are actually going out and laying in soybean fields, even soybean fields that don't have volunteer corn in, which in the past, we always thought, okay, you have to have volunteer corn out there. You have to have a host out there in order for that insect to want to lay its eggs out there. But we're seeing a tremendous amount of egg laying from the northern corn variant in soybean fields. So we have the regular variant, we have the southern corn borer, or western corn rootworm that affects our area. We have the extended diapause version of the northern corn rootworm. So we have a lot of things going on, causing us to have more rootworm pressure than we've seen.
Right. And this has been a history of what's been going on. The western started really around Fort County in Illinois, which I lived in Illinois during this, and we were having westerns lay in soybean fields and had extended diapause. So they are hatching on top of the next crop. This is what's going on. There's more and more conversation about the northern. So there's a little key I use to identify. So the northern, I always think, is green on the back. And so I think about Green Bay. So I just right away, or North Dakota or whatever you want, but N and northern and green. The western, always I think about Wichita because it's yellow and black on the back. And it's almost like an Iowa Hawkeye. But since Iowa's not west, right? And so that's how I identify them. So you can know which ones you have. If you've been in a field with both, it's a lot of fun because you're just covered between them and the ladybugs. They're everywhere. And so walking beans this time of year is kind of a difficult thing because they're in the bean fields laying, but generally the frost kills them. So if you just have them in the beans, don't be alarmed because it's pretty typical for them to be there. But if they're laying and you have some extended diapause, you're going to need some clinicians to help you get through that conversation. And we'd be happy to talk more about that as you have those problems prop up.
Yeah. As you're looking at your fields this year, and we talked about some of the fields that may have some issues in them. A lot of good corn out there, like we said, but fields may have issues. And if you have some root lodging or a plant that died prematurely or those kind of things, I'm recommending carry the shovel in your combine cab with you. And as you get into those areas, get out there and dig up some roots. Take a look at the roots like we were doing here. Look for feeding on that lower crown. See if that crown is intact. Look for some of that health. And then use a way to document that, right? So Phil, our precision ag guy, and what we do with Data Forward is an awesome tool to identify those areas of a field. If we don't identify a problem area in a cornfield and we're a corn or soybean rotation, 2 years from now when we plant corn there, we might forget, oh shoot, I had a rootworm problem there and I forgot to do something to manage it. So a great tool for us to use. Think long term, assess things in the fall. I know it sounds weird carrying a shovel in your combine cab, but not a grain shovel.
Everywhere I go,
a dirt shovel.
Yep.
Right.
My dirt shovel is always in my pickup.
Yep,
so.
me too.
We've talked a little bit about all the different rootworm technologies. There's some correlation to weed resistance with rootworm resistance, and you might want to touch on, either one of you touch on why it's so important to have multiple modes of action, different technologies to work with to fight. We don't want to see rootworms becoming resistant.
Yeah, so the new Rootworm Pro, we're really excited about and looking forward to getting into the lineup. It's different in that it's used RNAi technology to develop the protein that actually attacks inside the insect, and the insect develops the protein that kills itself. So it's not a BT. So everything we've had so far in this conversation today, and by the way, this year is the 25th anniversary of the first commercial BT in the seed industry. So this is a significant year for SmartStax Pro to come out, because now we have a way to use a non-BT attack to go after the rootworms. So we have multiple modes, and multiple modes is the way we're going to do a lot of things coming up in the future. And a lot of it's going to come from how we differentiate those different modes and how far apart we can get them to be, so that the more unique they are, the longer the resistance will take to form inside that insect.
Yeah, the 5222 technology is totally different from Smart Stacks, but it's still a cry protein.
Right.
And it still kills bug in a similar fashion. It's just using a different protein to do it. So the RNAi thing is really cool because it blocks a protein development in the insect and dies from that. The RNAi technology does take a little bit longer to kill the insect, but we still get it in time where it's not causing significant feeding on the roots.
Right. And to your point, 5222 has a unique BT in it that's not related to the Cry 3s that we've been using, or Cry 34, 35s we've been using. So it's both bring us some really good weaponry to use.
As we launch Smart Stacks Pro, we'll have 3 versions of capability to kill rootworm or protect. You're not going to get them all, but protect against rootworm. So we can cross-sell, cross-plant from year to year, switch technology from field to field to help with that insect resistance management effort.
So rotating, just like we talked about on above ground.
Right. Definitely. Well, let's talk about some specific products, Lyle, that we've got to offer at Latham.
Yeah, so we have, like I said earlier, we have 16 different hybrids that have rootworm technology in them. We're really excited about 2 that we're introducing this year. New LH5159 Smart Stacks at 101 day. We brought this in to be a complementary product to the LH5249 Smart Stacks and LH4989 Smart Stacks. So great lineup in there. The diversity, the female on this LH5159, we really like what it brings from a plant health standpoint, a root system. It's got a nice girthy ear. It's got some nice length to it, nice deep kernels. Excited about what it looks like. It's a very attractive hybrid out in the field too. So a lot of great comments from our showcase plots and other places that we've seen it. And then the other one is the new 5209 hybrid that we touched on a little bit before. Again, we're using a different cry protein in there, so it gives us some flexibility that way. We have 3 modes of action of above ground insect, along with 2 modes of action from rootworm, plus then, 3 modes of action on corn borer, 2 on rootworm, plus we pick up the Western meat cutworm, black cutworm, Roundup, Liberty tolerance, Refuge in a bag, all the things we want to be effective there. And that late season plant health on this product is just absolutely fabulous. So it is a full 102-day hybrid. So we can move it north, probably up into that central Minnesota area. Highway 212 probably be as far north as we're going to want to go with it. It's going to move south very, very well into Iowa as a delayed plant situation or a replant situation. So excited to have that to be a complement as well. So we stacked ourselves in there with, a number of hybrids. They're not that far off in maturity. We have 4989, 5159 now, 5249, 5209, 5389. But we want to make sure that we have diversity, because that's the core maturity where in our footprint where we're having rootworm issues. We have a lot of diversity. Look at the product guide and find things that can fit your management style in your field.
We've got a lot of great products, and I think the bottom line is there's going to be a lot of demand for those rootworm products. So I would say get your orders in early to be able to get the product that's a right fit for your farm.
Yep.
So, well, thank you. Great discussion on corn rootworm. Let's pivot back to talk about soybeans and some different technologies we offer. One different method that we use is our Latham Ironclad. And Mark Gunmar, our soybean product manager, is here. Do you want to touch on Ironclad a little bit, how that came about?
Yeah, so a history lesson.
Yeah, that's okay,
cool.
but no
All
quizzes or anything. Just a quick lesson.
All right, so and basically the word ironclad comes back from even pre-Civil War history, where they were, most of the battleships, naval battleships, were made out of wood, and in order to withstand the firepower from the enemy ships, they started plating them with iron to give them protection, and so that hence the name ironclad that gave protection to those battleships, and so back in 2012. Bill Latham, John and Chris's dad, actually challenged our soybean product team to come up with a concept that would help the northern Iowa and southern Minnesota farmers just kind of overcome the hurdles that they were facing with their soybean production. And 6 main hurdles that they had to overcome were soybean cyst nematode, iron deficiency chlorosis, Phytophthora root rot, brown stem rot, white mold, and then sudden death syndrome. So basically our team kind of went together and we formed this ironclad concept. We've continued over the years to look for soybean lines that really do well on most of those problems that the farmers can face. We haven't been successful in finding ones that all the time that combat all of those, but a lot of times it's five of those, 5 out of the 6, and so that's really what our ironclad concept is all about. Strong defense against those things, yet really excellent yield as well, and that's really been the key component. We've really got some excellent yielding soybean lines that are ironclad. In fact, the ironclad products came out in our 2013 product guide, the first of them. And since then, we have never had a #1 selling soybean in the Latham lineup that was not an ironclad.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And so our customers have really, grabbed that concept and taken it to heart. And it's really been, a phenomenal thing that we've done and tried to help them out. And, I think maybe in the future, we might even be looking at adding some, maybe like frog eye leaf spots are really starting to be a problem, and even charcoal rot might be something we have to add in the future to the ironclad concept.
Well, the neat thing is with ironclad too, we've won a lot of first trials with those ironclad products too.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of offense there too, even though they cover all the bases for defense. So really exciting. And the great thing is we've got them in all the different trait technologies as well. So it's not just in one or another, and you can only find it at Latham. So
right.
It's a neat thing. Well, Mark, you've traveled around the country a lot as well. What are you seeing for soybean diseases in your travels so far?
Yeah, so a lot of things going on out there, just like the guys that said it in the corn. And of course, top of mind for most of those farmers is the drought or the lack of moisture that we've had in the fields and stuff. And so you would kind of think that, well, maybe diseases aren't going to be that big of an issue, in a year where you've got a drought and dry weather. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. There are some areas that had some timely rains, timely in the aspect of being able to produce some good yields and good crops, but also timely in seeing that those diseases showed up. So yeah, so we're seeing things out there. Obviously some IDC showed it up earlier, which is not a disease, but it happens. And white mold is now starting to show up. I mentioned frog eye before.
You think in a dry year you wouldn't have white mold, but you still have white. I mean, we've been wet the last few weeks, so still have some white mold show up. Can't get rid of it.
Yeah, and same thing with sudden death syndrome. We're seeing SDS show up, and that disease actually attacks a plant, fairly early in its growing its growth cycle, and so to have it start showing up now means that there are some fields out there that are getting some moisture and starting to show some effects of sudden death.
Well, thank you, Mark. We appreciate it. Let's turn. We talked a little bit about the dry conditions, and let's turn to what Latham is doing about stress tolerance on future corn hybrids. Lyle, would you want to take us through that?
Sure. So farmers don't like drought. Researchers kind of get a kick out of drought, not from the standpoint where we like to see drought, but it really helps us knock out hybrids as we're looking. So as we expand our research program and what we're doing on elite trials, a drought like this is really going to help us sort through some things. So to talk a little bit more about it, we sent Bob down south. He talked about that a little bit before, put him out in the field. We got a little video of him out there. So let's show that, and then we'll continue the conversation.
Sounds good.
Hi, Latham Country. It's Bob Foley. Today, I wanted to invite you along on a little road trip I'm taking. We're in the Mississippi Delta, actually up on the north side now. We're kind of bouncing between Arkansas and Tennessee. And you'd ask, why would Latham be wondering what corn is doing in the Delta? Well, we're spending a great deal of time looking for new genetics. And part of that look is to find genetics that take stress and heat tolerance so that we can bring them up into our neighborhood. So we're not necessarily looking for hybrids as much as we're looking for inbreds that stand the tests that we put on them for heat and drought and the pressures that come with being in these hot, dry environments. This is an irrigated location. And just a quick look at a couple hybrids. I'm standing between two hybrids here, and you can see how much health and presence we have left. This is about 3 weeks from harvest in the Delta. And to my right, we have a hybrid that's absolutely obliterated and folded up. So it's interesting that both of these hybrids have the same female, but the males are different. And when we start working on products to bring and talking to people to bring in new genetics that we want to work with, we're definitely going to put something like this on our list and walk past and not spend any more time or money on a product like this. So I just wanted to give you a little look, make you aware that we're out here working, looking for plots. I know Lyle and Mark in corn and soybeans have been doing education plots this week. So the whole force is out in the field, and this is the straw that I drew. So I hope everything's good in your field. This is what's happening on our field, and I look forward to seeing you again. We're showing you LH.
Bob, looks like you did draw the short straw to get the Mississippi assignment, but we'll go to any length to be able to find great drought products, right? And did you have a good time down there?
The corn was good. It was surprisingly good. It was very hot and pretty Delta-ish. I would say it was wet everywhere we went. And that dirt, that orange clay they have takes almost no water at all, and it just is greasy. You don't really sink in as much as you slide through it. And so that plot and video was all the way in the back of about a 50 range field. And so the puffing and huffing and sweating is all about getting there to look at the corn, not so much about the corn. But we saw a lot of great products and have identified several things that we want to bring in and some things we want to get rid of,
right,
which is really the goal of the research department, right? I mean, before they get to elite trial status, our goal is to try to cull the herd more than it is to advance things from it. So that's a great way for us to cull things out, is to go deep and go pressure and really put the test to everything. So we do enjoy those trips. And as Lyle said, we enjoy drought locations. We enjoy problems, to Mark's point about white mold. We have an instance of gray leaf spot and southern rust and common rust and tar spot. And all of these are moisture and humidity driven items. And this morning, I don't know who was outside at 5 o'clock this morning, but it was 48 degrees here in Clear Lake.
Wow.
So it was cold. That's temperature inversions from yesterday's hot day of, I think we're in the mid 80s. That's moisture, whether there's moisture raining or not. And that causes these canopies to fill up when we have good canopies with water, and they'll just sit there and fester and, provide more bacteria to grow. So a lot of this is coming from a lot of these wide variations we have in temperature as well.
Yeah. Well, talk to me a little bit about, as pre-development manager for Latham, what you're looking for, the quest for great future corn and soybean products.
Yeah. And silage.
And silage as well.
Silage, right. And so we talked about this at kickoff. One of the things we're tasked with now is to try to expand our footprint for what we're bringing in. As the dealers and the customers are expanding the size of the company and where we're moving our product out to, the need for more products, the appetite for more products and more technologies and new advancements in rootworm and more advancements in above ground insect work, it's going to take more than just the access points we have been using the last 20 years. And so our job is to not only do a better job and an increased presence in our own breeding program, but we want to have a larger extent of access points and new people as providing materials that we can use, whether it's products that are market ready or products that we can breed with or make combinations with. And so we have a whole realm of new testing and expanded research. We use winter nurseries in Mexico and Chile to help us stay at the front of things. But a lot of these products that are coming into these education plots that the guys are using, some of the things that Phil would have at the Agronomy Center, the breeding demo, is all coming out of some of this research that we've been doing now. And so, down the road, long term, thinking 5 years, 10 years, this is when we'll start seeing some of this stuff come to fruition, but trying to stay in front of where the marketplace is going. you and I talked several times
Mhm.
about food and where food is going. And, you know, I think the advent of COVID has caused the shopping to be different, and what the people want in their diet is different. And so we're taking a look at several soybean type products that are more in the food alley, where we haven't really been more in the yield alley.
Mhm.
On the forage side, we're spending a lot of time with, maybe it's not so much about silage piles as it is about how much quality can we feed, and maybe have less acres, do the same amount of feeding, or get better quality meat and dairy out of our animals. And so we're working with Corey, and he's going to talk a little bit about that, I think. And Lyle and I and Corey have spent a good deal of time on, you know, retrofitting the silage program, so we can look at some of the new events that we can bring in and try to get us more in that quality aspect rather than just yield aspect. So that's where it's at.
Yeah, so many exciting things coming down the pike.
Yep.
You might just touch on the expansion of Latham research over the last decade, and specifically the last 5 years or so.
Yeah.
It's grown a lot.
Yeah. I think when we first started working together, I think your advancement process was super strips and first trials, which we still use today in different formats. But I think the expansion of companies breeding. Now, a lot of people think that the breeding companies and the trait companies are the same thing, and they're not always the same thing.
Mhm.
But with editing and editing companies coming in, it's starting to multiply the places that we have access from. And so when everybody walks in the door with this new 108-day product, we can't just throw a dart and pick one. And so the whole concept was, how do we get to the best one that fits our needs? And so we have this system of needs assessment that we use to help guide the researchers and guide our access and guide our conversations with providers. And we'll actually tell the providers, whether it be, you know, Bayer on the big side or Syngenta or the little company in Germany that we work with, right?
Mhm.
This is what we need, because we've got 9 out of 10 guys surveyed set. And so we need answers to those things, not just what you're trying to bring into our program. And so I think that whole needs concept from our sales force and our customer base has really directed the way we want to go about access. And then to fine tune what those access things will do and how we profile them, we needed this testing system. So this expansion of research in corn and now in soybeans is really a profiling mechanism for us to fine tune and fit things at a finer level.
It's exciting stuff. We've seen a lot of change in the last 5 years, and just can't wait to see what the next 5 to 10 years bring. We're going to see a whole host of new things in agriculture.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Exciting times. Well, thanks
Yes.
for what you're doing, Bob.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about, let's pivot to the importance of proper seed placing in depth. Lyle, we've seen some issues with that, and what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I talk a lot about that, and I'm going to make a call out. We just got a call out on the screen here from Jamie Erger over there in Eastern Iowa. Hi, Jamie. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Jamie.
She joined me at a tour over in Marshalltown, and she was really excited about the conversation. We were digging roots, and everybody was in there clamoring at them and having a great time. So planting depth is so key, corn and soybeans as well. But me being a corn guy, I really focus on corn, and I want to see that total nodal root system in the soil. So I talk 2 3/4 inch planting depth. People look at me kind of funny, Lyle. I can't plant at 2 3/4. If I get a heavy rain, I'm going to have crusting problems, and that corn's not going to come up. But I got that comment a lot over the last couple months, and I thought about it the other day, and I asked a question. I think it was over 40 guys I asked this question to. When was the last time you had a driving rain that compacted your soil in the spring? You didn't get good emergence. And the one group was 20 guys, and not one raised their hand in the last 10 years. And the other group was 22 guys, and only 2 raised their hands in the last 10 years. So my challenge back to them was, if you are only seeing a crusting problem 1 out of 10 years, but you're planting your corn too shallow all 10 years, what yield are you giving up on planting too shallow? Chris is going to throw up a photo there. This is corn planted at different depths. The one on the left is at a 1/2 inch.
Same hybrid,
same field, same fertility conditions. This is all in a small area. So we had a 1/2 inch, and actually I'll back up. This wasn't actually a test that we did on purpose. This is an actual cornfield where a guy tried to plant in an uneven seed bed, and he created these issues in his planting process. So we have a 1/2 inch, 1.25 inch, and a 2-inch, 2.25, I think, inch depth. Just look at the ear size, right? So that's
pretty
all
amazing.
based on planting depth, right?
Wow.
All other conditions were the same in the field. So that's all on planting depth. So I go back to my question. If you're concerned about crusting and you have 1 out of 10 years where you maybe lose 5% of the stand because of the crusting, but 10 out of 10 years you plant at a 1/2 inch and you got a 1/2 ear, you lost 50% of your yield over those 10 years. So focus on planting depth. We need that root system. If we scroll down the picture a little bit, Chris, you can see that and zoom in on that bottom part of the root. You can see those nodal roots, those ones in the bottom. The far left plant was planted at a 1/2 inch, and look at the curvature, the kink it's got right at the bottom. So we don't have the anchoring system in there correctly. We're not getting into the ground correctly. You can actually see there's 2 sets of nodal roots above the soil line on that plant. The one on the far right is close to the depth that I like to talk about. I always say 2 3/4 because I know growers are going to cheat on me. They're going to plant 2.5 or whatever. So, but Bob and I did a video last spring when it was dry out. You know, there's lots of questions. How deep can I go to find moisture? And so we talked about how deep to go to find moisture. Corn can easily emerge from 3.5 to 4 inches. Not a problem. We want to find moisture, get into the moisture zone, and be ready to make that thing work correctly. So we saw a lot of growers take our advice on that last spring, and we're seeing some great success with that. So that's super important, I think, from an overall standpoint. And then soybeans, right? I've seen guys plant soybeans. I have to see a few beans on top of the soil, otherwise I'm not planting right. And I'm like, wow, what a waste of seed, because those beans laying on top, they're not going to grow.
Right.
You know, that root doesn't go down, soybeans come up. So my statement on soybean planting depth is 1.5 inches to 1 3/4. And guys are, wow, I can't do that. Again, to go back to the crusting thing. Phil's got a lot of stuff going on at the Premier Agronomy thing, you know, different tillage practices and all that stuff. So I go back and I ask those same group of guys, why do you think you have a crusting problem? Was it history that your dad and granddad told you that when it rained too hard, it got crusted? Because the tillage practices that we're using today, whether it's no-till, minimum till, whatever, we're leaving so much residue on the top of it, you have to have a significant driving rain to cause that crusting problem. And so keep that in mind as you think about next spring and what you do in making your plan.
Yeah, it's great. If you could put that picture back up, Chris, and look at those roots one more time. This is also key in how we're having a lot of this premature death going on in some of these farms and fields. If you'd focus in on the bottom roots and you take a look at the health of the pith on the left, the shallow planted hybrid same hybrid plant is brown, and the bottom of the point, the growing point, is also lost its color. The healthy one on the far right is bright and white and wet, and on the left is brown decaying. And you'll see, actually, if you go up about 4 inches, you see a brown circle in there, and that's actually stalk rot that's come in. Mm-hmm. Now, your stalk rots are always coming in from these decayed points. So that growing point needs to be planted deeper. This is our biggest key for planting depth. If you plant at 5 inches, your growing point is going to be at 1 3/4 inches. If you plant at 3 inches, 1 3/4 inches. But if you plant at 1 3/4 inches, your growing point is going to be 1.5 inches or 1 inch. And that's what's going to give that hot ground. And we've talked about this at field days. When we were kids walking soybeans before Roundup, we'd take our water bottles to the field and we'd bury them in the soil to keep them cool. And the roots are doing the same, but our feet would be hot, right? So it's on top. So the closer to the surface we get that crown, the warmer it is, and the more it's going to look like the left plant. And if we can get that deep, get that seed deep so that crown will be at 1 3/4 inches, it's just naturally going to go there. If you're below that planting, you'll be in that cool zone, and your plant will behave longer, which will drive test weight, kernel quality, filling out the ears, etc. And so that is very critical, and that shows everything about why planting depth is so important. Going deeper is wise on you as well, because people speed up their planters and everything lifts up as they go through the field. Yeah. So I'm a 3-inch guy.
Yeah.
I don't even mess with it. It's just going to end up at 2.5 when we're done, and that's the way it is.
There's so many challenges to planting, right? And we talk about 40 opportunities as a grower, and what's the most important aspect of planting a crop or cropping season? It's planting, right? Super important. And to Bob's point, that soil temperature getting hot and that root up in that upper part, we had reports of soil temps this spring of 140 degrees when corn was 6 to 10 inches tall. And so just think about what that root system is going through. Bob talked about he and I back in the old days walked beans before Roundup Ready soybeans. We both cultivated corn too.
Yeah.
And we used to throw soil up against that plant and protect that root. We don't do that any longer.
Because the planters couldn't get deep enough, right? They were just little sled shoes that went through the ground, and they ended to where they were. So we cultivated to throw up against the crowns.
Yep. So.
Well, great discussion. This is one thing that we can get a bison and a jackrabbit to agree on. Plant your corn deeper, right?
It's because we've screwed up a lot of fields.
I think we need a Twitter account that says plant your corn deeper. You guys are very passionate, and it's great information.
Good.
So thank you on that. Well, let's stay on corn here. Let's talk a little bit about ears and fix versus flex. And you hear a lot of talk about, some companies going more to fixed ears. We've got a good combination of both fixed and flex. Maybe you want to touch on how you manage the two.
Yeah, so we'll start with the history. Since Mark got to do a little history real quick, we'll talk. Back when it was open pollinated varieties, farmers would keep ears out of their field and reuse it for the seed for the next year. And of course, what they were picking was the biggest ears, which typically ended up being the longest ears. So most of the corn genetics that came out of the South were long flex ears. And we still have those genetic families present in our systems today. We got to a point after breeding and inbreeding and hybrid vigor where the breeders were able to separate the families. And so the males were able to make us long ears or fixed ears, and the females were able to make us the seed quality parent that goes in the bag now. So today, with lots of breeding, we've taken the fixed ear hybrids, which many people would realize would be known as racehorse hybrids back in the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Fixed ears, high population, high nitrogen, black dirt, never sands. You get into those central Illinois areas where you can just plant all day long and you never see variation in the soil. Racehorse hybrids. The flex ear hybrids were the timber soils. The stands were Kentucky, Southern Illinois, Southern Iowa, down by Creston Atlantic. Those areas, they needed flex because they needed lower population for the plant to be able to produce.
Mm-hmm.
We blend those two together and we come up with this undefined line of semi-determinate or fixed or semi-flex or flex. And so now our flex has more of a scale of it's kind of flexy to really flexy. And our determinate, semi-determinate has this kind of fixed to very fixed. And so with conversations at the office or with Lyle, you can talk about, I really need the most flexy product you have. So it'll be one of the semi-flex hybrids, but it's termed semi-flex in the protocol. This is really advantageous for us because as we go across a farm now, when we have rolling hills and valleys and our soils change as we go through the farm, these hybrids are made to adapt to those differing soil conditions, whether our population stayed consistent or even now as we switch populations as we go across the field. So the semi-flex gives us that ability to move across soil types, and the ear will adjust as we move along. Flex brings you the capability to take stress. So it's very important that if you have varying soils and you have a varying soil farm or a field that's very tough conditions, that you stay to the flexy side of things. If you can run and gun and feed like crazy and water, either side of that parentage will be fine, and semi-flex or determined is the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that what you think?
Yeah, I agree 100%. So when we look at flex, we got two different ways of flex. We can flex in length and we can flex in girth. And I got a couple examples here that I pulled out of the field the other day. And you can see there's some difference in length of that ear. There's also a difference in diameter. This one here has 22 rows of grain, and this one has 16. So 22 on this one, 16 on this one. Which one has the most kernels on it? Everybody raise your hand, right? Everybody would say this one. because it's got 22 rows of grain. There's actually 20 kernels different between these two ears. So our actual yield is going to come in kernel depth and how we put in test weight into those things and that kind of stuff. We don't have true determinant ears in our lineup, no hybrids with true determinant ears. So we have semi-determinate.
Nor true flex either.
Nor true flex either, right? And so my suggestion is don't focus on what 21 was when you're looking at planning for 2022. Okay. Just because we have drought this year doesn't mean we're going to have drought in 2022. So on those better acres where you're managing them fertility wise and you're looking for high yields, go after some of our more semi-determinate hybrids. There's not a problem doing that whatsoever. On those acres that really have difficulty, yes, stay at the flex hybrids. So we were really hoping to have you all with us at the field day today and really go through our lineup and talk about all that. But you have great opportunities. Get to a local showcase plot that a local dealer has, take our product guide with, and just kind of walk through and look at the differences between hybrids and pick things that can handle the different soil types that you have on your farm.
Yeah. To your point on don't be afraid of the determinacy, or don't be trying to switch because something happened this year. Your good hybrids are still your good hybrids. Flex and determinacy now are more of a three-dimensional concept. It's not just length and girth. It's kernel depth, kernel width, and kernel thickness. So we have a 5-fold way. It's more than three-dimensional, right? It's 5-dimensional. If we lose kernel depth, but we're long and girthy, so when we rate plots, right, we go out and rate plots all over the countryside in Latham country. We rate all of our hybrids every day. The hybrids we see, they're girth by length or they're length by girth. So we know when we get done, they're more flexy than fixed, or they're more fixed than flexy. That's the beginning of the story. The kernel depth, the kernel quality, the girth, the thickness of the kernels. Some of our hybrids are pronounced for what kind of quality they have and the depth and the size of the kernel. And it's in the literature as you look through it. Those are hybrids that'll offer you many opportunities to adapt to the situation you're planted in.
Yeah, if you're watching, follow us on Facebook. You see the Ask Agronomy videos, and earlier in August, Phil had a question about how do I calculate yield and what components go into yield with kernel quality. Awesome little video, because when he was doing all the numbers, it was test weight, it was kernel count, it was plant population, and all different kind of combinations, and he came up to the same number by using a different combination and a different setting. So grain quality. So we have hybrids that are known for super heavy test weight, and people think, well, those are our high yield ones. We have other ones that are known to have more of a average, above average test weight, and people think, well, those are the low yielding ones. No, absolutely not. It's all about kernel volume. No grower has ever been paid a premium for test weight. Right. A bushel is a bushel. 56 pounds is 56 pounds. And so it just takes a little more volume. So on those little lower test weight hybrids, it just takes more volume to work with to get there. So watch that video. We have a ton of cool things on our website on those Ask the Agronomist videos, and take a peek at those.
Yeah, Ask the Agronomist is a great resource. Phil does a great job, and a lot of times you guys do cameos too on Ask the Agronomist. So, and then too on LathamSeeds.com, we've got a whole host of videos, great content there about all this. We are going to have a Q&A at the end here, so make sure you text the keyword Latham to 74121. So don't want to forget that. We're going to shift gears now. This has been a great discussion. Thank you guys very much. We're going to shift gears now to forage, and we've got Corey Catt is our forage product manager, and he's in the field, and he's going to touch on some things we're working on Latham Forage.
Well, thanks, folks, from the studios. Here we're in the field today in western Wisconsin in one of the many yield trials that we have across the Midwest. Today we're going to talk about a few things. One of them is, of course, our corn silage varieties. The second thing is plant spacing or population. And then the third thing is starch digestibility. We'll kind of touch on a few of those things. So we'll just take a quick little walk. Why don't you come along with me? So here you can see we're doing a little population study. This is a lot less stands or stand population and what we recommend, we usually recommend about a 28,000 with our leafies. We went a little more aggressive on this just to show the impact. And then also the diameter of the stalk, how we increase the size of the diameter of the stalk. Right next door, you can see that's our 35,000 plant population that we intended here, but we wanted to do a little experiment and look at the quality as well. And we'll step over and let's kind of take a peek at the stock size difference with that one. Take a look right here. You can see a little population difference. You can see that's about that 34,000. Some of them were at 38,000, and that's what's significant. We wanted to talk about that because when we send our samples to the lab, we know exactly in the field where our samples were taken, and we know what the population differential is. So, you can see that this is different than this. This is where we planted at, the plant population, but this is a little tighter. So that's going to change your fiber portion, or has a potential to change your fiber portion. So we'll head back on out. We'll just show a picture of our leafy here in just a moment. You can take a picture, you can see, or take a look at our leafies. You can see that we have about probably double the leaves above the ear, about 5 to 10, about 10 leaves above the ear. Normal corn is about 5 to 7. You can see that this is a normal variety. Right, oops, there. That's normal. You can see this is about 5 to 7 leaves above the ear, and leafies are much more robust. And then take a look at the size of that leaf. It's just gorgeous. Really wide sun soaker leaves. It's fabulous. And with those leaves, they're a lot more digestible. And one nice thing about it is that with the leaf mass like that, we can back off the plant population just a little bit. So, and that's what we recommend, is about 28,000 to 30,000 plant population with our leafy varieties. And as you can see, we added 2 kernel rows round. So that's a significant impact. Just look at the difference. This is at that lower population, that study that we showed you first. And then second is the 34,000 plant population. So we added 2 more kernel rows. This ear will flex out and will definitely compensate for it. So just as a review, corn silage on the dry matter basis, about 50% of it is from your starch and the other 50% of it's from your stover. And another impactful and important thing to talk about, and we're looking at that, is just the digestibility of those both of those components. And we'll chat about that in just a moment. So when we look at, we're going to have you turn to page 14 and 15 in your product guide. If you don't have one, you can find it online. What's important about anything right now is making sure that we got the right hybrid on the right soil type. So the hybrid is at its best. That's the most important and most impactful thing that you can do in the management side of things. Dr. Fred Below talks about the 7 wonders of corn production, and a lot of people have seen me show this before. These are factors that for high yield. You can see that weather, that's something out of our control. Plant food, of course, that has a large contribution. The hybrid selection is really important, and where you place it is really important. And then the previous crop that's planted, and making sure we got that right hybrid for that soil type. And then plant population, that's one thing that we just looked at, and that's very impactful, especially when it comes down to fiber digestibility. And then, of course, tillage and growth regulators. So another thing, on plant food is just finding that perfect balance of all these nutrients. We're living in a world with great technology and the ability to tissue test and soil sample and really determine what's the best plant food combination for the plants to be at their best. So you kind of want them to have a spa all season long. Second page that's really interesting or really important, I think, is on page 65. This gives us an idea of our indexes for our fiber and starch digestibilities and overall silage rating. So the best managers make the best decisions with the best information, and that's what we're out doing here in our yield trials, is trying to access that good information right from the field. And that's what these indexes are part of, some of that information that we provide. So starch digestibility is really important, especially in a beef setting or in a dairy setting. When we run the starch through the animal, if it's indigestible and it goes into the manure, it's kind of like pooping out your profits, and we don't want to do that. We want to be able to have that animal utilize all that starch that goes in there. So one of the things that we discovered several years ago is prolamine, or it's a factor of starch digestibility. And if you look at the kernel, prolamine is a protein that accumulates from as soon as we dent, and then as the milk line drops through the plant, the prolamine level increases. At Latham High-Tech Seed, we wait till it's complete black layer, and then we do an assessment. So we're comparing everything at the same time. So one of the things that we can do without sending it to the lab to determine if it's a softer starch or a harder starch is actually just take a flashlight and shine it through the back of the kernel. I know it's kind of hard to see on video, but you can see that there's no light coming through this one. This is very digestible, a very soft starch. So, and then this one, this is kind of a higher test weight thing. And when you shine the light through the back side of it, you can actually see it kind of looks like a marble, or it lights up a little bit. And this is indigestible. Although if we are using this for corn silage, a variety like this, because it has maybe a specific specific ability to go over some soil type that we really need this product for. That's a nice management or risk management system. We can actually, now that you've got the knowledge that this is kind of a heavier test weight, higher prolamine thing, so it's something that you'll definitely want to kernel process with your chopper, and then know where it's at in the bunk if you can possibly know where it's at, and then be able to wait as long as you can, because as this thing ferments in the good corn silage and siling process, it breaks down that prolamine, or that piece, kind of like a plastic barrier around the starch molecule. They actually remove prolamine to make corn plastic, actually. So it's called hydrophobic, or that's a big long word for it, means that rumen microbes can't gain access to that starch as an energy source. So it's important for us to know and provide you and your nutritionist with all this good information in order to make some really good decisions. Again, best managers make the best decisions with the best information that we provide. And that index is available on page 65 in the Latham High-Tech Product Guide. So again, silage specific as a review, the lower plant populations, we want to be at that 28 to 30,000 if your soil supports it. If you get above that, the ear kind of snips back, and it also doesn't take stress as good at those higher populations. At lower populations, it's more stress tolerant because they've got more space in between those plants. And that's the area of the plant that is the most indigestible, is this lower portion of the plant here. So we want to really be able to make sure that we're at our best, the hybrid's at its best, so we can get the best nutrition in the bulk. So fiber digestibility, just as a review, in the corn silage arena, for every 1 point of increase of fiber digestibility, we actually can gain about a half a pound of milk per head per day. So that adds up really fast, especially if you've got a large herd. Starch digestibility, for every 1% that goes through the animal into the manure, it's about a 0.72 milk depression per day per animal. So, if we don't pay attention to those little details, we can actually be losing a little bit of money. And it's just so subtle, but these little differences can make some big impacts. So there's a few things that we're just going to talk about from the field today. We could talk a lot more, but I'll tell you what, the guys at the studios down in Iowa are anxious to chat about more yield in the field things as well. So we're going to send it back to the studios. Thanks for being along here in Western Wisconsin. From Latham High-Tech Seed, I'm Corey Catt. Bye now.
Well, thanks so much, Corey. That was great. Great information. Corey should have been a professor. He does a great job.
Yeah.
You want to talk to us a little bit about our forage program?
Yeah, I do have a quick call out though. So somebody tweeted or sent a text #GoJacks. So thanks to Mike up in Minnesota
Okay.
supporting me. I think I'm the only one that got supported up here on stage today. So
You must have paid him for that.
Thanks. Yeah. So we've done a nice job of expanding what we're doing on the silage trials. So our elite program that we've talked many, many times about on how we assess product, we took our silage program and moved it into that format as well. So we have 5 different locations where we've set up elite trials. We're doing a bunch of different testing. We're also getting more active at showcase trials with dealers and pulling samples and getting testing out of there. So we're really focused in on feed value. To Bob's point earlier on, how we make big pile silage, smaller pile but get more or the same amount of milk out of it. So we use less acres to do the same thing. We're really excited about how that's coming along. And we have some new technologies that we have in these trials. I'll let Bob talk a little bit about that and what that can do, but some new technologies we're looking at as well.
Yeah, thanks. I think, with the access on the silage side, one of the things we wanted to take a look at was how the product will feed. And so to Lyle's point about, smaller piles and same herd size and same output, I think we're actually after the quality of milk, the quality of dairy, the quality of the meat. And we're working on these trials, not just as trials to say that we're doing it. We've chosen labs that are specifically designed for silage characterization and quantification of the data. We're working with trial managers who are specific to doing silage testing. So we're not just half gaming our way through the system. It's very important to us. Silage is a big component of Latham's success, and we want to give it more respect than what it's maybe been getting. We want to give some more shoulder push to Corey Stone so that we can roll it a little bit faster, if I can say it that way. And so we've started receiving data in already 2 weeks ago, and have found already a couple new products that surprised us. But on the very front side, we want to make sure we can classify our lineup as grain first and silage capable, or silage only hybrids. And there'll be lots of hybrids that aren't silage capable, but our lineup should be able to be quantified as grain first products, and we'll do an admirable job. But you're going to start getting the data that goes along with this, and so it should be more open information sources for you.
Yeah. We're going to have a lot more capability of understanding, like Bob said, that grain hybrid, how does it translate into a silage product? And we've seen over the last few years, like LH5245 Double Pro, for instance, is an awesome grain hybrid, gets the Twitter feed and has its own Twitter feed, but it's a super silage product as well. Its silage quality is bar none in our conventional hybrids like that. So excited to see that. We're also doing some things on earlage too, and focusing on earlage for some feeders that want to feed a higher grain type of a silage product. They do earlage, and so we're doing some evaluations there as well.
Okay. Well, great discussion on forage. A lot of exciting things coming down the pike here. So thank you guys for that. We're going to switch gears a little bit, still talking about different technologies, but this time on seed treatment technologies. And we're very excited to have a new seed treatment offering this year at Latham. Maybe you want to touch on that, Lyle?
Yeah. So the last couple of years, we're always looking to figure out how we can enhance the performance of our products. And we can do that by helping those seeds get out of the ground better, create a more consistent stand, have healthier roots, and all those kind of things to make that plant function better. There's a new product in the marketplace called Viantis. It's a Syngenta product, and it's a product that protects against Pythium. And Pythium is probably the biggest hidden disease that causes stand reduction in corn and soybeans. And we have a slide up here to just show how this expands protection. So all those different isolates of types of Pythium are all the different names around the outside of that circle. And there's other products, the metalaxyl, ethoboxam, have been historically products to use. And you can see their little lines, the green or orange lines in there on where they protect. The Viantis is the big circle on the outside, the big dark line. So when it's out on that side, it's protecting against all of those different isolates of Pythium. So we get a much broader spectrum. So it handles a lot of different soils. So the next slide shows us on soybeans on Petri dishes where we're incorporating this into our system. So on the soybean side, we're updating our Soy Shield Plus product and putting Viantis in there. So Soy Shield Plus within our Soy Shield platform will have Viantis in it. And you can see on the right, the protection we're getting. These are Petri dishes infected with Pythium. On the left is an untreated soybean. And then we have a generic blend, a Celeron, and then our new Latham Soy Shield with Viantis. So it really excited the protection we're going to get on soybeans. Viantis helps with Pythium on soybeans, but also offers some protection and help on Phytophthora. And so when we start looking at ironclad soybeans, Phytophthora is one of the pieces on ironclad. So if we're short just a touch on Phytophthora, we can use Soy Shield Plus, which is going to have Viantis in it now, and we can make that bean, I think, an ironclad soybean with a seed treatment. So excited about that. The next picture we got is some seedling growth, and now we're comparing. Of course, they flipped around on me. The Soy Shield Plus with the Viantis is on the left and untreated is on the right, and you can look at that difference, right? So the whole goal is to maximize the number of kernels that we put in the ground that we can actually get to emerge, right? And that makes it cost effective on using seed. So we're also evaluating this in corn. The next slide has Petri dishes on corn protection and what it can do on corn. Pythium is probably, like I said earlier, one of the most silent robbers of corn stand establishment that we have in our industry, and it's throughout our footprint, especially. I mean, when you go into the East Coast over in Ohio and stuff, Pythium is super bad over in that part of the world, but we see it plenty in our world too. So within our elite trials, we have a lot of testing going on seed treatments in both corn and soybeans, and excited to see how we can enhance the stand establishment of our high quality seed.
Yeah, those pictures are pretty amazing.
Yes.
I mean, showing the control on
Yep.
Pythium. And growers should be excited because if you plant Soy Shield Plus, you get it without any additional costs. So a great benefit to using Soy Shield Plus
Yep.
from Latham on your soybeans. And it's coming in the corn in the future too. So great things. Well, staying on seed treatments, we also have issues with sudden death syndrome and cyst. And maybe, Mark, would you want to touch on a product that we're using to combat those?
Yeah. Saltrol is a product that we actually came out with a couple of years ago, and it's from Syngenta. That product does a tremendous job on sudden death syndrome. And we mentioned before that we're starting to see SDS, even in this dry year, starting to show up. I guess I just like to kind of forewarn everybody that when we get back into a normal weather pattern, we have some good wet weather or something like that coming down the road in the next couple of years, to really consider Saltrol seed treatment. Not only does it do a great job on sudden death, as you mentioned, it also does some work on soybean cyst nematode, and that's still the number one soybean pest that robs yield in the whole United States. So anything we can do to limit the damage that SCN does is really paramount. Needs to be looked at.
Yeah, great stuff on Saltro. We're seeing some customers coming to Latham just because of Saltro. So that's really exciting stuff. Be able to fight both cyst and SDS is great. So let's touch on a little bit on Latham quality, since we're touching soybeans. And we've been known for quality for many years. It's right on the bag of every soybean that we put out. Would you want to touch on what makes our Latham quality so good?
Yeah, well, John, 75 years ago, it started with your grandfather, and working with oats and good quality seed oats for the growers around that Alexander area. Your dad and your uncles kind of worked into the soybean end of the business, and quality became a really good main focus. And it starts at that plant there at Alexander. Over the years that they've just done a lot of work on that and put in a lot of equipment that helps with the quality of the soybeans coming out of that plant, and then the employees, the dedicated employees that we've got there. And obviously the goal from the get-go was really to bring in as many soybeans into that Latham facility there at Alexander as we feasibly could, and to limit or minimize the amount of seed that was stored offsite in a farmer's bin. That way we can continue to monitor that seed throughout the growing year, or throughout the winter, really, and make sure it maintains its quality and is good quality seed. As it comes in, every load is hand probed and visually inspected.
And you've done 95% of those hand probes the last 20 years.
I've done a few over the years. But yeah, it's a really good system. A lot of people say, well, why don't you get the hydraulic, probers and things like that? And that's not the idea. The idea isn't to do it quickly. The idea is to maintain that quality that we have. And so, yeah, it's just been a really good solid core also of production growers that have been also doing this for multi-generations. And those families have been growing seed for Lathams for a long time. As we've moved our business north and to the west a little bit, in Minnesota, further into Minnesota and into the Dakotas, we've also been able to work and find those good production growers that will help and maintain that Latham quality. And so, yeah, it's key to the business. It really is.
Yeah, thank you to the Latham growers. They've done just a tremendous job over the years, both in northern Iowa and then all the way up into the northern Minnesota and into the Dakotas as well. We've got a great bunch of growers that
Absolutely.
have really done, and employees. We've been fortunate. Greg Jakes has been our plant manager for many years, and before him, his dad was a plant manager. So their family has had a great history and great reason why we're known for quality the way we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's great to have them on board.
Yeah, definitely. So, Mark, we were touching on a couple key different soybean varieties of ironclad, and I know we had 3 picked out. Would you want to touch on those?
Yeah, sure, John. So obviously we have a lot of products to take a look at our product guide, but really want to focus on 3 of them right now. And as you mentioned, all 3 of these that we're going to talk about are ironclad products. And the first one is a brand new line for us. 1383 XF is a 1.3 maturity line that is obviously said as an ironclad. It's got the 3A gene for Phytophthora, tremendous stress tolerance on that line, completely resistant to brown stem rot. It's got great scores for a white mold and iron chlorosis as well. The other thing that's really kind of neat about 1383 is it has a very strong pedigree. And so one of the parents of 1383 is 0982 R2. And that's been
super popular variety for us.
Favorite variety up until, a couple of years ago when we wound up having to drop most of our R2s, from the lineup. The guys still, mentioned 982 and how good a variety that was. And so I'm happy to say that 1383 has 982 in the background. When I was out looking at plots over the course of the growing season, you can go out into the field and look at the plots that we have. And 1383 just reminds me so much of 982, just the appearance of it. And it looks like the performance is going to be there as well.
Yeah, it's exciting when you have a new technology like Extend Flex, but yet when we know the genetic background, it gives us a lot of confidence to go out with it in a big way. So really excited to see how well that product does.
Absolutely. I think our dealers can go out and promote 1383 to their customers and know that it's going to be a solid product for them. Moving on from 1383 to a little bit later in the lineup, we have our 2193. It's an Enlist E3 product, and it's a 2.1 maturity. It is our number 1 selling soybean. And so this is, again, the number 1 selling soybean. It's an ironclad, and we continue with that tradition. And looks like 2193 is going to be super popular here in 2022 as well. It's got that 3A plus 1C gene for Phytophthora for some of the really, really, tough phyto fields that are out there.
That's about as strong as you can get.
That
to have
is,
those
it's got those 2 major genes for it.
Right.
So yeah, it's tremendous. Great emergence on that. I really love the emergence on 2193 in no-till fields, especially. It just seems to fire right out of the ground. The brown stem rot's there. Good solid iron chlorosis as well. So this product is really good. White mold on this line is average, maybe a little bit better than average, but you could really help it, using like some foliar fungicides, later on in the season as well. And so 2193 has just been a tremendous line for us and continues to be. What really impressed me this year was early on in some of our plots, we saw the soybeans, because of the dry weather, we saw them really, kind of struggling, just because of the environment to come up and pop up out of the ground. And it's kind of unusual. We hadn't seen that in a number of years because of the dry soil conditions. I was amazed when I went back about a month later to some of these plots, and 2193 was just gorgeous. It's hard to believe that a product can be that vigorous and that tough, so to speak. So it's really earned a really good, strong stress tolerance rating as well. The last one we'll talk about is 2887 R2X. It's an Extend product for us. 2.8 maturity. Seed gene for Phytophthora, good, strong, all around, ironclad. It's got great scores for, white mold, sudden death, iron chlorosis. It's just a great line. BSR is right there, an excellent rating as well. When we talk to our customers and our dealers in the southern part of our territory, especially you get central Iowa and south, you ask them what their core product is, what product they really, really love, and 2887 always comes up. It's a dynamite line, and it stands gorgeous, and it gets good height to it. You can put it out in some lighter soils, and it's going to maintain that height, and so it's a really nice product.
Also won several first trials for us over the years too, and
Absolutely.
with the great defense and offense with 2887.
Yeah, and that's the key.
Yeah, and it's nice. You talked about 3 different trait technologies too: Extend Flex, and E3, all ironclad. So great picks there. So thank you, Mark, for great soybean discussion. We talked on quality, and Lyle, would you want to touch on corn quality? What makes our corn the quality so strong?
Yeah. So, when you started the Latham High-Tech seeds for the corn side was 2004, right? And you had a long history with your dad and your grandpa and the quality. And so you weren't going to build a corn processing facility, I assume, right? Like we did in soybeans, when we moved north, we found partners that matched our quality standards. And we've got a great team that works with us there. Visual things are just so important for us. Along with all the other quality standards, germination, vigor, and all that kind of stuff. Any crop, whether it's corn or soybeans, is only at its best quality as soon as you harvest it, right? And so things that we do at Alexander on the soybean side, as well as our soybean partners, how they handle it after that is how we maintain quality. We do the same thing, have the same expectations of our corn producers, and so we work hard to maintain that with them and stay on top of them and challenge them to be better every year too. So
that's great. Yeah, quality is strong for us on both the soybean and the corn side, and going to be that way in the future too. So thank you guys for the great discussion about quality and technology. We are going to have the Q&A here coming up, so make sure you text keyword Latham to 74121 74121. And then we're going to switch gears, and we had Phil Long, our precision agronomist, was here earlier, and now he's in the field, and he's going to touch on some of the great agronomy projects he's been working on this year.
Thanks, John, and welcome back to Latham's Premier Agronomy Center. I want to cover a topic that really starts back at planting, which is really when we have the most impact on yield potential, especially when it comes to corn. What I'm covering today is singulation and emergence, or non-uniform emergence, uniform emergence, whichever way you want to look at it, and which one really impacts yield the most. And hopefully this will help you kind of understand what happens to the plants out in the field and why we need to slow down sometimes in the spring and do some extra checking while we're getting the planter going every year. So to start off with singulation, I'm standing in front of our demo plots, the soybean demo plots, and this one, which has some corn standing in the soybeans here, represents different singulation rates. So On my right or your left side of the screen is a 1% or 99% singulation, good singulation. On my left, your right shows 5% poor or 95% good singulation. So we don't always have a good visual representation of what that actually means when you're sitting in the tractor cab each year and it says, oh, 96% singulation. Oh, that's got to be good enough, right? Well, maybe it's not as good as what you really think it is. It's tough to really understand. So this plot kind of helps us get an idea what 1%, 5%, and so forth looks like as we're going through the field. So singulation essentially means how well it's dropping a seed. This has everything to do with the seed meter and how well you're caring for your planter. So you can have doubles, which essentially, or triples, which are plants on top of each other or seeds on top of each other. And then we can have skips. So we can have a blank spot in the row. We don't have that picket fence stand. So what I want to talk about when it comes to singulation is the doubles and having skips in there. So when we have a skip or an empty spot in the row, you cause basically no population. So it doesn't look like there's nothing out there because obviously you have plants around it. But there's essentially in that spot where there should be a plant, in this case at 34,000 plants per acre, there is no plant. So you've lost your population there. When it comes to a double or a triple, seeds on top of each other, what happens is one plant in particular, it typically beats it out of the ground and causes more stress or competition for that neighboring plant that it's on top of. So we can end up with things like this. I've got a couple to look at here. These two in particular are what we're talking about. So this would be the example of a double. So that particular plant that I had, it was right on top of the other plant right next to it. And you can see it's significantly smaller ear. This, I do have the yield estimates on that. Shows kind of a dramatic effect, but this smaller one is actually 183 in terms of if you planted if it was a stand of 34,000 compared to the ones next door, which were more uniform. This was, I'd say, the full potential with uniform spacing, picket fence stand compared to the one that was next to this particular one. So we had a jump of and you can see they're much bigger around as well as many more long. So it goes from 183 on the small end all the way up to 275 bushel per acre potential between these 3 years here. Now, this seems dramatic, and it is. It's to prove a point that this is impacting your yield. So if we look at it on a full scale per acre basis, we typically see just shy about 0.8 or just shy of 1 bushel per acre per percent. So I said on the right side here, that's 95% singulation. So that'd be about a 3 to 4 bushel an acre loss, just having that many doubles and skips and issues in your stand out there in that particular field. So hopefully that puts it in a little bit perspective. Typically we see around a bushel or a little less per percent of singulation reduction. I'm going to set these down here in just a second. So some of the things that we can do to help fix this. Number one, I mentioned is be on top of checking your planter. Obviously the meters are paramount when it comes to this, making sure there's no issues depending what there's all kinds of planters out there, from electronic to still chain drive or just about everything, hydraulic driven. So really it comes down to checking the seed meter, having it checked for you to make sure that there's no issues coming out of the gate as that meter spins and releases it down the seed tube. And then the seed tube is another thing. You got to make sure there's no issues with the seed tube as it gets down into the ground, and that if you're running Keaton seed firmers or something like that, that you're not dragging, you're closing that furrow and it's not impeding how that seed drops out of that seed tube. So a lot of things to think about there. The other thing I'll say, if you have issues with singulation, the simplest thing you can do is slow down and see how it impacts your singulation, especially if you're using finger pickup and things like that. It always affects seed size and speed affect how it comes out of the planter, or out of that meter. So slowing down, seeing how that affects it, and really checking it as it comes out of the ground and things start to emerge. So the next part of this is the emergence part that I mentioned up front. So I've got a couple of plants here I want to talk about. But first, how we did this actually, our precision ag intern, Kirsten Sunken, staked several of these hybrids out in the field. And this one I picked 5377, 103-day hybrid here. It's a semi-determinate ear that we'll look at. that the flag test is the simplest way to do this. And that just simply involves, well, different colored flags, or if you have stakes or something that you can mark on which day each corn plant came out of the ground. So I typically do it for, like a stand count size of row. You can do it in whatever size of row you want to, but just stake each plant in that particular flagged off area as it comes out of the ground. See if it comes out which ones come out the first day, second, third, and so on. So as we get further down the row, out to a week plus in terms of delayed emergence, that does significantly impact yield and how plants compete with each other. So I'm going to grab a couple of these plants that I've got here. I'm going to do my best to hold them up beside me here, but this particular hybrid, if you look in the book, has a really good emergence score. And that's what I want to tune you into too, in terms of hybrid management, is making sure you understand that emergence rating. Now, I will preface this with saying that we have some nitrogen issues here. The nitrogen was not showing up in the field. We had plenty of it down, but just not in the right form. We had a drought, so I didn't choose the right form given how we had to get these plots started. So you'll notice the ear size is a little bit smaller than normal, but it still shows what I want to show here this morning. So these two plants here, you can see, have very similar sized ears. If I take this one out of the way here, these two plants were emerged the same day. I think it was May 17th or something. Emerged the same day, have very similar sized ears. And if we average those two out, I believe I had it wrote down here. Yeah, one was 197 and one was 202. So just an average of about 200 bushel per acre between these two here. And the other thing, it's tough to see in these, but I also want to point out too, is stalk diameter. So when plants compete with each other unevenly, one comes out behind the other. Obviously, it impacts things like canopy structure and plant structure. Well, they're always going to want to try and get to that sunlight. So these are all about the same height if you'd look at them side by side. But the one that was delayed by 2 days has a significantly smaller stalk diameter too, which is not good when it gets later in the season. So we look at this ear here, and you can see that this one is significantly smaller. This one comes out to, I know it's a lot shorter and a lot less round. It's about 120 bushel per acre if you take this out to a 34,000 plant stand. So I'm just going to let these fall here. As you see the plants, they're about the same height, but like I mentioned, the diameter of the stalk is quite a bit different here, and you can see this one's also got a zippered ear as well. So it was significantly stressed compared to the others coming out even 2 days later. This particular hybrid all came out within about 3 days, which, like I mentioned, has a very good emergence score. The other one we had flagged, it took up to a week planting it. Early planting took about a week to emerge. So that week significantly slows it down. Typically, when we see delayed emergence of up to a week, we're going to see anywhere from 20 plus bushel per acre differences. And in this case, like I mentioned, that was closer to a 70 bushel difference. But like I mentioned, you got to think about this on a per acre scale and how it impacts each acre that you're growing corn on. So the number one thing to think about when it comes to uniform emergence, back to the planter, is planting depth. We talk about this a lot, but the importance of planting depth and getting that crown established right. And obviously uneven planting depth is going to make it come out much more uneven for not good reasons. The other thing I also want to mention is residue management. In the last several years, I've seen this a lot, especially with more corn on corn. Managing that residue, keeping it out of the furrow, not hairpinning it, getting it in the furrow. Corn kernels do not imbibe water very well from residue, and many times I've been out in the field and seen this. If it's not seed to soil contact and it's seed to residue contact, those ones are going to struggle. They're going to imbibe the water very slowly and likely get diseased before they get out of the ground, especially in an early planting scenario. So if you've got all those factors compounding on top of each other, early planting, lots of residue, things like that, you need to make sure that you're managing that residue, whether it's with tillage in the fall and spring or row cleaners or strip till or something to help manage that residue so that we don't have as much seed to residue contact. The other thing I'd say is closing the furrow. This is a big one, especially in different conditions or no-till conditions. Making sure that you're closing that furrow and not getting air gaps in there. We've got so many different closing wheels, different systems on planters nowadays to help close the furrow in different conditions. So depending on what you're planting into and, consistently planting into across your farm, pick the right one, the best one. It really sets you up for success in getting that furrow closed, making sure that there's no air pockets. The last thing I'd say is knowing your hybrids. I talked about how 5377 is a semi-determinate, so it needs the ears out there. If we have skips in the row, or we have uneven emergence, things like this, it's going to significantly impact the yield because it needs those plants out there per acre. It does not flex as well as some of the other hybrids that we have, which flex later in length and girth. This one's gonna take more of a hit from things like uneven emergence. So that's really important. And the last thing is just know when to stop. And we talk about this every spring, but know when to stop the planter when you're looking at conditions in the forecast that don't coincide with good emergence and imbibition, imbibitional chilling and things like that are caused by snow or cold rains, a couple days out. You got to remember that couple day window there that corn needs to start that germination process before you really hit it with really cold extreme temperatures. And then couple that with your hybrid choice. Look in our product guide and make sure that you're looking at that emergence score and organizing your seed shed so that you're planting the ones that emerge faster and better first, and not the other way around. If you're planting the ones that don't emerge as well or have a lower emergence score first in early cold soils and tough conditions, then you're likely going to see a lot of those kind of scenarios play out in your field. So with that, hopefully that helps you a little bit when it comes to uniform emergence and singulation. The emergence is probably the biggest part of the equation, but really everything you do up front at the planter is extremely important. So make sure that you slow down, check more than just depth next year when you're planting, and take the time to get as right as you can as you're getting started. So with that, I'll kick it back over to you guys.
All right, thanks, Phil. Great job. Can't wait till next year to be able to see everything in person. I mean, it's great to see it on video and the maps and everything, but it's going to be so awesome next year. So can't wait for that. But thanks for all your work on that. So now we got our segment where we're going to do some predictions. And I've asked each one of the five of us here to give a prediction, whether it be about football or seed, you name it. You can name whatever you want. So Phil changed clothes real quick here and is on stage.
Way to go. The Flash.
And Phil, do you want to go first with your prediction?
Sure. Yeah. My prediction is that we will be live in person next year for the field day, and that I'll hit 300 bushel with 5245 on our high yield plot.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Love that.
Wow.
You'll see that on 5245 on Twitter too. That's awesome. Love it. Thanks, Phil. What are you thinking, Lyle, for predictions?
I have two. South Dakota State will be playing North Dakota State in December for the right to go to the tournament. I'm sure South Dakota State's going to win. So that's my
to go to the
prediction.
national championship.
Yeah. That's
Interesting.
That's one of them.
We'll be watching that.
Yeah.
They'll have to be in different sides of the bracket.
Yeah, they were last year. So
Okay.
we'll do that again this year. So yeah, if they're bracketing correctly, they need to do that.
That would be correct.
Put the two powerhouses on either side, right? So my other one is we're going to sell out a 4454 by December 1st. Those boys up north are loving the performance of that hybrid, what it looks like in the field, and we'll be sold out by December 1st. So get your order in.
Yeah, it's a great hybrid. It just stays strong over many years. It's doing a great job. All right, sounds good. Well, since we talked a little bit about jackrabbits, I'll let you do one, or you can do.
So I'll go.
Okay.
The North Dakota State thing is kind of low-hanging fruit, so I'm going to leave it alone. Okay.
Okay.
This is the 25th anniversary of the first commercialization of BT in corn.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're talking about Smart Stacks Pro and 5222 and multigenic double pros. And so it's really an appropriate advent of really upping the game in what we can offer. So here's my prediction. Within the next 5 years, half of our products will be multi-mode action, and the multi-mode will be coming from RNAi, or messenger RNA technology in
That's a good
5
one.
years.
That's a good one.
And that's what I think. So buckle up.
You got your crystal ball on that one.
Yeah. Buckle up because it's going to get fun.
Awesome. Great one. And you didn't even throw any shade back on him for his prediction.
Oh, wait. What did you say the game was?
It's usually in December sometime.
Okay.
maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do that
Yeah.
in December.
It'll be
December,
outside
January.
in Brookings, so we'll know what's going
We'll have to do it if that happens. We'll have to do a special Facebook Live.
You're going to host the game?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. No.
All right. Good thing Mark and I are sitting where we are between these two guys. So, Mark, what's your prediction?
So I'm going to stay with a little bit of more safety, and I think I'm going to predict something that maybe I have a little bit better handle on. I think 2193 E3 will be our number one selling soybean again in 2022. And that's just a safe prediction.
I was going to say that's not going on a limb.
Nope, not a chance.
Well, that's a good prediction. Well, I will say that you will see some Extend Flex that will pop up too this year, and they're gonna show well. We're gonna be sold out of them shortly, so that'll be one of my predictions. And then going to football, I have to say something about Iowa State tomorrow. I'm saying Iowa State 24, Iowa State 17 in a close game.
You mean what? Iowa State?
Iowa State 24, Iowa 17.
17. Okay.
Iowa State wins by 7 is my prediction. So
You heard it here first.
sorry, Craig Holland and Jerry Broders, but that's my prediction. All right. Well, now we've got some questions, and what you've all been waiting for, some questions that came in. And the first one, we had a question, liquid versus dry insecticides to use with planter to combat rootworm pressures. What are the recommendations? You want to take that one, Phil?
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to liquid versus dry, there is some data on it. It seems like it's usually tested when there's not high rootworm pressure. So I'll start with that. The key is high rootworm pressure. And if you're faced with higher rootworm pressure, like obviously we had a lot of stress this year, the dry is typically always going to beat out liquid, no matter what rate you put on. Obviously, you're putting out liquid down and furrow. It's going to leach down before the critical time. So, dry with smart boxes or something is the most beneficial way, or you're going to see the most control. But I would say also, when it comes to the BT traits that we have, we can't beat those even with insecticides. So I hear a lot of people using insecticides and smart stacks. I don't personally like to hear that, because you're selecting, just like we do with weeds and anything else, you're selecting for those super bugs, essentially. If it can resist an insecticide and the BT trait, then we're really going to have issues. So, obviously you should be using, a double pro or something with the in-furrow treatment, rather than a smart stacks and an insecticide treatment as well. So.
Okay. Great one. Thank you. Okay. The next question is, I've been hearing from other farmers seeing tar spot in different areas. What are you guys seeing, and any recommendations? I'll pass this one to Lyle and Bob.
Go ahead, you start, Bob. I'll
Yeah,
follow up.
so we actually have prepped some tar spot work for some other things we're doing. So maybe Chris, if since we saw this question come in, and is there a map along with this one as well? There. So a lot of the questions that we've been hearing in the comments we've been hearing is, I've got tar spot for the first time ever. And it's really not true. You may be just noticing it. Tar spot in Illinois, as an example, first showed up in 2015 and has been in Illinois every year since, and sometimes in the exact same spots, in the exact same fields, but not always. So it comes out of Mexico. This is a chart that shows everywhere that tar spot has been recorded since 2015. So if you live in any of these counties, this is not the first time it's been near your farm. If you go to the slides with the photographs, these were taken in this last 5 days on Lyle or ours or my travel. The very bottom center one, the grayest leaf with the fewest dots on it, has kind of an eyeball around the tar spot. Now this black spot can't be rubbed off. It's named appropriately. Now, that eyeball sometimes has been thought to be caused by the spot or because caused the spot, one way or the other. No evidence suggests that either of those is true. There's lots of things that can cause this. If we pan out a little bit and we get to the more advanced stages, either the top right, the far right, or the far left, you just pick one of those, Chris, and bring that out. We can see how fast this can spread. That tar spot from those first couple dots to a leaf that's like this, or the leaf in the bottom right corner, that can happen in less than 2 weeks. And it can move very quickly across the field, and it stops the green material from actually existing anymore. So it stops all the movement of fluids throughout the body of the leaf. And when it does that, the leaves just absolutely turn to your field will just turn white, even though it's covered with tar spot. If you can go to that leaf that was in that far left side, Chris, that one was actually taken in Missouri. We took that on Sunday when we were at a yield trial. And it was very interesting. The entire yield trial was full of gray leaf spot and full of southern rust, and I never saw tar spot at all. But that hybrid in both reps looked like this and was covered in tar spot. So 2 years ago, we didn't know. Do we have genetic differences? Do we know what to do with it? And we're probably still in that answer. We think so. We know there's genetics that are at play in this thing. We know that it's overwintering in our soils. We know that the only way to manage it is to be in front of it, because once it gets a hold of it, it's over. You can't stop it. You can't spray it. You can't stall it like you can gray or northern. So if you have it, we'd like to know about it. I think for sure we would. If you have it at any level that looks like these pictures here, and you still have green tissue, count yourself lucky and hope it holds.
Yeah.
If it turns white, get ready to harvest early, because it can smoke the development of the final kernel fill, and you can end up with a lot of loose teeth on your ears, and you can end up with some corn, if it had really good yields already built up, can cause you some stalk problems really fast. So maybe you want to add to this, but
yeah, it goes really quickly, and the challenge is identifying when it's going to come in, right? You look at the map, and all those counties have been identified as having tar spot there, so it's gonna hit at some point in time. I think we're also still trying to figure out what environment makes it actually progress as fast as it does.
it's not as well defined as we thought it
Yeah,
was.
but
Moisture is key.
Yep. A couple of years ago, I was evaluating a trial, and there was definitely some difference in genetics.
Yeah.
But trying to peel that back and figure out the consistency of that is a challenge, because we can't get the same level of pressure in the same location back-to-back years. And so this is going to take us some time to evaluate, but it is high on our radar to watch for, because at this time of year, I mean, this first came up probably a week ago. A guy started talking about tar spot. Well, you're way at the end of August with an accelerated crop year.
Yeah.
Our crop is about 2 weeks ahead of time. So a lot of our corn is 2/3 to 3/4 milk line. We're going to have some effect when they kill fast. But if we were to get an infestation in early August, would be just totally detrimental to a corn crop. And so we're kind of watching for that and making sure we can figure out how to deal with it in the future.
Yeah, and we don't even know if it's cytoplasmic or genetic right now. So, it'd be easy to say, well, why can't we just RNAi our way through this, right? Well, we don't understand how it works.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't just go in and start editing and pulling words out of sentences to make new sentences and decide that that's how we're going to take care of it. It would be throwing darts. And so until we understand the epidemiology of this thing and get a little bit more confirmation, it's kind of like what we went through with COVID, right? We understood first we had to understand how it worked. Then we had to understand where does it work and how do we defeat it, and all that science that went before any vaccinations could be started. And so we're kind of at that beginning in corn and tar spot. And tar spot on trees is not the same as tar spot on corn. You'll see this on leaves. You'll see it on grasses and waterways. Not the same animal. So there's different versions of tar spot, which is just wonderful news.
Yeah. Yeah. And we also don't know what kind of management practices we can do to reduce
No,
long-term.
It's likely a lot to do with moisture and high residue and lots of these things.
Well, great information there. And I'm sure you'll be hearing more from us about tar spot in the future, definitely. Just one last question. I know we're running out of time, but we've talked a lot about stress and corn side of things. Mark, what are you seeing? How's the stress affecting the soybeans?
Yeah, so great question for whoever sent that in. It's one of those things where, dry weather stress especially really kind of brings some things along. Soybean cyst nematode is a classic example. We've seen some fields this year in Iowa, Minnesota, the Dakotas that I've been in, where soybean cyst is really starting to rear its ugly head. Historically, it's been kind of a silent yield robber. It's always there, and it always has some effect on yield. But this year, it really is more pronounced. And that dry weather stress just really makes soybean cyst, just kind of come to the top. And we know that Dr. Tilk at Iowa State and his staff have done years of trials, and that we know that the PI 88788 gene of resistance is starting to break down. And we're seeing some resistance build up in the populations of soybean cyst nematode out there to that particular gene. So we're doing our best to try and bring some new races or new genes into the lineup. The Peking gene is something that just until recently has not been a good product to cross with. It's getting better with gene editing. I think Bob mentioned gene editing earlier. It works well on soybeans too, to try and bring some of those things to the forefront. So if you're seeing soybean cyst nematode out there, or if what you think might be soybean cyst nematode, let us know, and we appreciate knowing about that. It's really having an impact.
It is definitely. We didn't hear much about it for several years, and it's really kind of come back strong. It seems like.
You got good weather out there. It's still there, but it just doesn't show its effects so much. But not so much in dry weather.
Well, very good. Well, that's the end of the questions that I see here. I just want to thank everybody for watching. It's been hope you've had a lot of fun, because we've had fun. Thanks to everybody for joining us on stage here and doing a great job. If you have questions, certainly you can go to lathamseeds.com. Call us at 877-GO-LATHAM anytime. We'd love to talk to you. We can also pass you along to a Latham dealer, and see your Latham dealer to get your products ordered early, because what we found out, especially the last couple of years, those great products go early. So get your orders in. We've got some great discounts we're offering now and through harvest. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.